9,600 BC, in a single day and night of misfortune, the island of Atlantis disappeared into the depths of the sea. For 2,400 years, we've called it a myth, a legend invented by a philosopher to make a political point about hubris and power. But what if Plato wasn't writing fiction? What if he was leaving a warning for future generations, a message we're only now beginning to understand? Because in 2024, geologists discovered something in the Sahara Desert that matches Plato's description with terrifying accuracy. The measurements line up perfectly, the geography matches down to the smallest detail, and the timeline coincides with a global catastrophe that nearly ended human civilization. This is the story they didn't teach you in school, the story that could change everything we think we know. Athens, 360 BC, a philosopher named Plato writes two dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. In these texts, he describes a powerful island civilization that existed 9,000 years before his time, a civilization so advanced it rivaled the gods themselves. He called it Atlantis. But here's what most people don't know. Plato didn't present this as mythology or allegory. He presented it as history, as fact, as something that really happened to real people in the real world. He claimed the story came from Egyptian priests, the guardians of ancient knowledge, who told it to Solon, the Greek lawmaker and statesman who passed it down through generations until it reached Plato's family. The Egyptians kept detailed records going back thousands of years, records carved in stone that survived when everything else was destroyed, records that the Greeks had lost because their civilization had been reset multiple times by catastrophic events that wiped out knowledge. Now, here's where it gets interesting, where the story stops being just a myth and starts becoming something real. Plato gave specific details so precise they sound like a surveyor's report rather than legend. The island was 127 stadia across, approximately 23 kilometers in diameter. It had concentric rings of water and land, 3 rings of water and 2 rings of land, like a target designed with mathematical precision. It had hot and cold springs bubbling from the ground, mountains to the north protecting it from harsh winds, a plain to the south, perfect for agriculture, red, black, and white-colored rocks used in construction, and access to the sea through a channel that allowed ships to enter the heart of the city. These aren't vague descriptions. These are measurements, geological features, architectural details, the kind of specifics you'd only get from someone who actually saw the place, who walked its streets. For centuries, explorers and treasure hunters searched everywhere for this lost civilization. The Mediterranean, the Caribbean, even Antarctica. They found nothing. Until 1965, when everything changed with a simple photograph from space. The Sahara Desert, Mauritania, West Africa. An American astronaut during the Gemini 4 mission photographs something from space, a massive geological formation, perfectly circular, with concentric rings radiating outward like ripples frozen in stone. They called it the Richat structure, the Eye of the Sahara. Geologists studied it and said it was a natural formation, an eroded dome, volcanic activity from millions of years ago. Nothing special. Case closed. But then someone did the math. Someone compared the measurements to Plato's text. Plato said Atlantis was 127 stadia across. The Richat structure measures 23.5 kilometers, almost exactly 127 stadia. The match was too perfect to be coincidence, too precise to ignore. He said 3 rings of water and 2 rings of land. Count the rings in the Eye of the Sahara. Three major rings, almost perfectly circular, separated by what would have been land. Mountains to the north? Look at the northern edge. There are mountains exactly where Plato said they would be. A plain to the south? It's right there, stretching for kilometers. Red, black, and white rocks. Geologists confirmed the Richat structure contains all three: volcanic rock giving red, limestone providing white, and dark sedimentary layers creating black. And that channel to the sea Plato mentioned? There's evidence of an ancient river system that once connected this structure to the Atlantic Ocean, a river that dried up when the climate changed. But wait, there's a problem, a major problem that skeptics love to point out. The Richat structure is in the middle of the Sahara Desert, one of the driest places on Earth. There's no water, no ocean, just sand stretching for thousands of kilometers. How could an island civilization exist in a desert? Unless it wasn't always a desert, unless something dramatic changed. 12,000 years ago, the Sahara was green, a lush paradise, with rivers, lakes, and vegetation covering the entire region. Hippos swam in the rivers. Elephants roamed the plains. Humans thrived in settlements that archaeologists are still discovering. Cave paintings across the Sahara prove this beyond doubt, showing giraffes, cattle, and people living in a landscape nothing like today. And Plato said Atlantis was destroyed 11,600 years ago, right when the Sahara was still green and capable of supporting civilization, right when something catastrophic happened to our planet. Scientists call it the Younger Dryas impact event, one of the most dramatic climate shifts in human history. 12,800 years ago, fragments of a comet, possibly from the torrid meteor stream, slammed into Earth's ice sheets with devastating force. The impacts were catastrophic, releasing energy equivalent to thousands of nuclear bombs detonating simultaneously. They instantly vaporized billions of tons of ice, sending massive amounts of fresh water into the oceans and triggering global floods of biblical proportions. Sea levels rose by hundreds of feet in a matter of days, drowning coastal settlements and destroying civilizations. The climate plunged into a 1,000-year ice age almost overnight as disrupted ocean currents brought freezing temperatures. Megafauna went extinct across the planet. Mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, all gone within a geological instant. And yet, some humans survived this apocalypse with knowledge they shouldn't have had. They built structures like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, massive stone temples constructed 11,600 years ago with astronomical alignments that shouldn't be possible for Stone Age hunter-gatherers. They understood mathematics well enough to create precise geometric patterns. They understood astronomy well enough to track stars and planets. They had sophistication that shouldn't exist in the Stone Age unless they inherited knowledge from whoever came before, unless they were survivors of something greater. So, what really happened to Atlantis? The comet didn't just hit the ice, it triggered a global cataclysm that reset human civilization. Floods swept across continents. The climate collapsed into an ice age. Societies broke down completely. Atlantis, if it was at the Richat structure, would have been flooded when sea levels rose and river systems changed. Its people scattered as refugees across the world, carrying knowledge with them. Most was lost as survival became the priority, but some survived, passed down through stories, through Egyptian priests, through Solon, until it reached Plato. But here's the disturbing part, the part that should make us uncomfortable. If Atlantis was real and destroyed in a single day by a cosmic impact, then we're not the first advanced civilization on this planet. We're just the latest in a long line of rises and falls. Human history isn't a steady march of progress from primitive to advanced. It's a cycle of catastrophe and recovery, of civilizations rising to great heights only to be knocked back to the Stone Age by forces beyond our control. And the question isn't whether it can happen again. The question is when. Astronomers have identified the torrid meteor stream as a potential threat, a debris field Earth passes through twice a year, containing fragments large enough to cause another impact event. We're more advanced than Atlantis ever was. We have technology they couldn't dream of, but we're just as vulnerable to a comet strike. Plato wasn't writing fiction to entertain. He was writing a warning, a reminder that no civilization, no matter how advanced, is immune to destruction. The only question is, are we listening, or are we going to ignore the warning until it's too late, just like they did?